Good day, ma'am. I am Janella D. Borenes.
And I am BICLAR.
And we are going to report about the behaviorist perspective. So, first, let us discuss about the behaviorist perspective. Behaviorists believe that all behaviors are the result of experience. Any person, regardless of her or his background, can be trained to act in a particular manner given the right condition. So the behaviorist perspective is divided into two groups, which are behaviorism and neo-behaviorism. But first, let us discuss about behaviorism. It is a theory that gives emphasis that behavior is mostly learned through conditioning and reinforcement. The theory of behaviorism focuses only on the study of observable and measurable behavior condition. It assumes that behavior is either a reflex evoked by the pairing of certain stimuli in the environment or a consequence of that individual's history, including especially reinforcement and punishment, together with the individual's current motivational state and controlling stimuli. Although behaviorists generally accept the important role of heredity in determining behavior, they focus primarily on environmental events. There are three behaviorism theories, which are Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning, B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning, and Edward Thorndike's connectionism theory. But first, let us discuss about Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning theory. He is known for his work in classical conditioning or stimulus substitution. His first renowned experiment involved a meat, a dog, and a bell. So in classical conditioning, before conditioning, food acts as the unconditioned stimulus, and the unconditioned response of the dog is salivating. Next is before conditioning, bell acts as the neutral stimulus, and there is no conditioned response and no salivating on the dog. 3 is during conditioning, bell plus the food, the unconditioned response of the dog is salivating. While after conditioning, conditioned stimulus, bell acts as the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response of the dog is salivating. As a result of Pavlov's experiment, he discovered several principles of classical conditioning as stimulus, discrimination, and extinction. Stimulus refers to the process by which the conditioned response transfers to other stimuli that are similar to the original conditioned stimulus. Discrimination refers to the process by which we learn not to respond to similar stimuli in an identical manner, and extinction refers to the process by which conditioned response are lost. Positive reinforcers are events that are presented after a response has been performed and that increase the behavior or activity they follow. While negative reinforcers are escapes from unpleasant situations or preventing something unpleasant from occurring. While primary are those that satisfy basic needs. And lastly, secondary are those that acquire reinforcing power because they have been associated with primary reinforcers.
And now we are going to discuss about Edward Thorndike, a proponent of S&R. Edward Thorndike proponent is all about S and R in theory. S means stimulus and R for response. Thorndike theory believes that children learn best themselves rather than receiving instructions from the teachers. Thorndike's S&R theory. Thorndike's early study with animals' behavior led him to declare his laws of effect. According to Thorndike, pupil learns more effectively and easily and retain that learning longer if it has pleasant consequences. Thus reward further learning, while punishment, failure, or negative experiences hinder it. Laws of learning by Thorndike. We have two laws of learning by Thorndike. The first one is law of readiness, and the second one is law of exercise. The law of readiness. The law of readiness states that when an organism, both human and animal, is ready to form connection to do so, it is satisfying. Not to do so is annoying. Thorndike believes that Readiness is an important condition of learning because satisfaction or frustration depends on individual states or of readiness. The next one is law of exercise. Edward Thorndike opined that practice alone was not enough for improvement. The connection is to be strengthened through reinforcement. Thus, the law of effect must also operate when the students practice. They should be aware of consequences of what they are doing. Otherwise, practice becomes ineffective or may even be harmful. The law of exercise states that any connection is strengthened in proportion to the numbers of times it occurs and in proportion to the average vigor and duration of the connection. The next one we have neo-behaviorism. Neo-behaviorism in the field of psychology is a branch of psychology that bases its teaching on the idea that people learn their behaviors by watching others and then imitating them. It focuses more on behavioral conditioning and cognitive processes. We have three neo-behaviorism theories. The first one is Tolman's purposive behaviorism. Second one is Bandura's social learning theories, and the last one is Gestalt's theory of learning. Edward C. Tolman theories and works, he founded what is now a branch of psychology known as purposive behaviorism. Purposive behaviorism has also been referred to as signing learning theory and is often seen as the link between behaviorism and cognitive theory. Tolman's theory was founded on two psychological views, those of the Gestalt psychologist and those of John Watson's behaviorist. The next reporter will be Miss Ellen Rose EMPREDO.
Bandura. So, Bandura is internationally recognized as one of the world's most influentially social psychologists for his groundbreaking research on the importance of learning by observing others. So, he have a social learning theory. He suggests that social behavior learned by observing and imitating the behavior of others. So Bandura proposed this type of learning involved four different stages. First, attention. Second one is retention. And the third is reproduction. And lastly, the motivation. So first is attention. So attention are deep learning techniques used to provide an additional focus on a specific component. Attention relates to focus on something in particular and note its specific importance. So that is attention. So next one is retention. So retention is a person's ability to transfer new information into other long-term memory so that it is easy for them to recall and put that knowledge to use in the future. The third one is reproduction. So, reproduction. This is the ability to perform the behavior that the model has just demonstrated. So, we see much behavior on a daily basis that we would like to be able to imitate, but this not always possible. Let's proceed to observational learning. So, observational learning is the process of learning by watching the behavior of others. So, this means the targeted behavior is watched, memorized, and mimic. And it is also known as shaping and modeling. So, observational learning is most common in children as they imitate behaviors of adults. So let's proceed to the Gestalt psychology. Gestalt psychology is a school of thought that seeks to understand how the human brain perceives experiences. So it suggests that structures perceived as a whole have specific properties that are different from the sum of their individual parts. So every stimulus in learning is perceived by humans in its most simple form, and it is also known as the law of simplicity. Gestalt psychology have seven principles: the proximity, similarity, closure, good continuation, good pregnancy, figure and ground, and symmetry in order. What is the law of proximity? So, the law of proximity is a principle in gestalt psychology that describes how the human eye perceives elements that are close together as more related than elements that are further apart. So, it is differ to color, shape, size, or other characteristics. Let's proceed to the law of similarities. So the law of similarities, it is the element that are similar to each other tend to be perceived as a unified group. So similarity can refer to any number of features, including color, orientation, size, and the indeed motion. So let's proceed to the law of closure. So law of closure states that when we look at a complex arrangement of visual elements, we tend to look for a single recognizable pattern. So in other words, when you see an image that has a missing parts, your brain will fill in the blanks and make a complete image so you can still recognize the pattern. Next one is law of continuation. So this means figure with edges that are smooth are more likely seen as a continuous edges that have abrupt or sharp angles. So the next one is the law of pregnance. So the law of pregnance is sometimes referred to as the law of good figure or law of simplicity. So this is law holds that when you are presented with a set of ambiguous or complex objects, your brain will make them appear as simple as possible. Let's proceed to the law of figure and ground. So the law of figure and ground is that we can distinguish an object. So the figure of the rule from background, the ground, this rule shows that when we look at the design, we perceive the figure from the ground distinctly. And lastly, the law of symmetry and order. So it is also known as Prägnanz, the German word for good figure. So what is the principle says is that your brain will perceive ambiguous shapes in as simple and a manner as possible. So that is the Gestalt psychology. Thank you for listening.